So, when I say risk management, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably a bunch of boring paperwork, right? Or maybe endless compliance checklists. Well, today we're going to try to change that. We're going to look at risk management not as some chore, but as the absolute essential blueprint for keeping an organization alive and even helping it succeed. It's really about being prepared, not paranoid.
And to really understand just how critical this whole thing is, let's start with the stakes. What actually happens when disaster strikes?
Just take a second and let this number sink in. According to the research, a staggering 90% of small businesses that get hit by a major disaster are forced to shut down for good within 2 years. That's not a small number. That's almost all of them. We're not talking about just a bad quarter. We're talking about total, complete failure.
So, that begs the question, what about the other 10%? The ones who actually make it through. Well, I can tell you the answer isn't just luck. The survivors, they're the ones who didn't just cross their fingers and hope for the best. They actually planned for the worst.
Okay, so that planning, it all starts with understanding the language. So let's get really clear on two ideas that people mix up all the time but are fundamentally different: threat versus risk. A threat is basically the what if. What if there's a flood? What if a hacker tries to get into our network? It's just the potential for something bad to happen. But risk is where the rubber meets the road. It takes that what if and asks two really important questions. One, how likely is this to actually happen? And two, if it does happen, how bad is it going to be? Think about it this way. A massive earthquake is a threat, for sure. But if your business is in, say, Chicago, you're not really at risk from that earthquake. Making this distinction is the absolute foundation of smart risk management. It lets you focus your time, your energy, and your money on the dangers that actually matter to you. Now, let's clear up another key relationship. You've probably heard of information security. Its main goal is to protect information using what's famously known as the CIA triad. Confidentiality, so the wrong people can't see it. Integrity, making sure the data is accurate and trustworthy. And availability, so you can actually get to it when you need it. Risk management, on the other hand, is the bigger picture. It's the whole strategic process of finding, analyzing, and dealing with risks to all of a company's assets, not just the digital information. We're talking financial risks, operational risks, reputational risks, the whole shebang. So here's the key takeaway. Information security is absolutely vital, but it's just one piece of the much larger risk management puzzle. Basically, risk management sets the strategy. It tells the InfoSec team what to protect and why it's important, all based on the big picture goals of the business. Okay, so how do organizations actually put all this into practice? Well, it's not by just winging it. They use established blueprints to build their defenses in a systematic, organized way. You can think of these as the instruction manuals. Frameworks, especially from organizations like ISO, they provide the structure. So ISO 31000, that's your high-level guide for managing risk across the entire company. And then you have more specific ones, like ISO 27001, which really drills down into the nitty-gritty of how to build an information security management system, or an ISMS, to protect your data. And here's the really important part. This kind of planning isn't something you just tack on at the end of a project. No way. It's baked in right from day one. Before a project even gets a green light, you're doing analysis to ask, is this worth the risk? What could go wrong? And what would happen to the business if this fails? It's a constant cycle of asking questions and evaluating. All right, we've talked about the what and the why. So now let's get practical. Let's open up the risk management playbook and see how it's done. Step one is always to figure out what you absolutely cannot afford to lose. That's what the business impact analysis, or BIA, is for. It helps you define three critical numbers. Your MTD, that's your drop-dead point, the absolute longest a system can be down before things get catastrophic. Your RTO is your goal for getting back online. And the RPO, that defines how much data loss is okay. Can you lose a day's worth of data, or is anything more than a minute unacceptable? So once you know what's mission critical from that BIA, you can move on to a formal risk assessment. This is where you systematically go through and identify the specific threats to those critical systems, and then you prioritize them based on the actual risk they pose. A really great hands-on example of how this works is called the Facilitated Risk Analysis and Assessment Process, or FRAAP for short. It's a super structured, three-phase approach. You start with a pre-meeting to get everyone on the same page. Then you have the main event,
a focused workshop where everyone works together to brainstorm threats and rank the risks. And finally, you wrap it all up by documenting everything and creating a real, concrete action plan.
Which, of course, brings us to the final step in the playbook. After you've found and sized up all the risks, you have to decide what you're going to do about them. That's risk mitigation, putting controls in place to shrink those risks down to a level you're comfortable with.
But wait a minute. How do you decide which controls are actually worth it? I mean, security can get expensive fast. This is where we have to stop thinking like techies and start thinking like business leaders and actually justify our spending.
The tool for this is the cost-benefit analysis, or CBA. It's a really simple but incredibly powerful idea. You weigh the cost of putting a security measure in place against the potential cost of doing nothing and just dealing with the consequences. It gives you a data-driven way to make smart security decisions.
Let's use a super common example, implementing multi-factor authentication. Okay, on the cost side, you got direct costs like software licenses, maybe some indirect costs like a little dip in productivity while everyone gets used to it. But look at the benefits side. You're avoiding the absolutely catastrophic costs of a data breach. We're talking fines, legal fees, lost productivity, and maybe worst of all, losing your customers' trust. When you lay it out like this, the decision becomes a no-brainer.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground. So before we wrap up, let's just boil it all down to the 3 core ideas that you really need to take away from all this.
First, always remember the difference. A threat is the potential storm cloud on the horizon. But risk? Risk is the actual probability that storm's going to hit your house and how much damage it's going to do when it does.
Second, remember the process. You don't have to guess. A structured method like FRAAP walks you through it in 3 clear stages. You prepare for it, you do the collaborative analysis, and then you create a concrete action plan.
And third, remember how to justify it. A cost-benefit analysis is what turns security from just another expense on a spreadsheet into a smart, data-driven business investment.
So we'll end here. You now have the blueprint for survival. You've got the core principles for finding, assessing, and dealing with risk. The only question left is the one right there on your screen. Look, it's not about if a disruption will happen, it's about when. So what's your plan?